Leadership is a learned skill, but most people think it's supposed to be innate. They think because they got to the point where they get to be a leader, that means they should already be a great leader, and that's just not true. And they don't go to work on the right things because they have this incorrect view or belief that because they got to this point of leadership, now they should already be great at it. So you have to go to work at it. And I know I did. I was not good at it in the early parts of my career. I rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. I made all the mistakes, and so I had to learn.
Welcome to another episode of the Starter Girlz podcast. I am your host, Jennifer Loehding, and wherever you are tuning in today, we are so glad to have you. All right, so I am going to open up with this today. Building a business isn't hard because you're not working enough. It's hard because at some point, what got you here won't get you where you want to go. And so I feel like this episode today is going to be so awesome. I feel like we talk about this in so many ways, but I think that this is all for the people that understand that growth is not about doing more. It's about becoming a different kind of leader. And so I'm so excited to chat with my guest today. But before we bring him on here, I do need to do a quick shout out to our sponsor.
This episode is brought to you by Walt Mills Productions. Need to add excitement to your YouTube videos or some expert hands for editing? Look no further. Walt Mills is the solution you've been searching for. Walt is not only your go-to guy for spicing up content, he's the force behind a thriving film production company with numerous titles in the pipeline. Always on the lookout for raw talent, Walt is eager to collaborate on film and internet productions. With a background deeply rooted in entertainment and promotion, Walt Mills leverages years of skills to give you the spotlight you deserve. Want to learn more about Walt and his work? Head on over to waltmillsproductions.net and let your content shine.
All right. And with that, I do want to make a mention to head on over to startergirlz.com. Tell you guys this every single week. And why? Because one, if you've missed an episode, it's a great place to catch up. It's also a great place to tune in and you'll keep in the know. You can sign up for our community newsletter. And then also, if you are an aspiring entrepreneur, or maybe you're a creator, you're in the thick of it, I don't know where you are, and you want to find out what your number one subconscious block is that may be impacting your success right now, well, I got your back. Got a quiz over there that you can take, 2 minutes. I built it out and it's fun. It will tell you exactly what might be stopping you right now from going to that next step. All right. And with that, we're ready to bring our guest on today. So I'm going to go back to talking about that business building. Building a business is one of the highest stake games you can play, and talent and drive alone aren't enough to scale it. Today, I'm joined by Andrew Pulls, a 3-time founder and executive coach who spent over 20 years helping entrepreneurs make the shift from operator to leader. Andrew has coached more than 10,000 founders and executives worldwide and worked with organizations like NASA, Dell, Netflix, and Epic Games. He specializes in helping early stage founders and small business owners grow without burning out by mastering leadership, influence, delegation, and culture. So Andrew, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, me as well. Thanks for having me.
It's going to be fun. You had to get through that whole intro.
That's all right.
You know, it's so
You did a good job.
intro. It's like, it's one of those things where like somebody comes on and they absolutely love it because they love hearing like all the accolades, right? Or the other people are like, can we just get through the intro and have the dialogue, you know? But my background, 22 years in Mary Kay, we did accolades for every introduction. And so it's just part of my, you know, like my existence that when we bring somebody on, we got to talk about all the cool deeds they have done. So hopefully it, you know, you approved. All right.
Absolutely. But also I think it's great for your audience, because don't you think that one of the biggest challenges of making the move to becoming an entrepreneur, I know this was true for me at least in my most recent business, this is my third business in my career, is that it's hard to see yourself for the value that you create in the world. You know, it's hard to see the way other people receive your value because we're so used to looking at ourselves through the critical lens of our own inner critic. So I think it's great what you're doing to start off the podcast, because it makes me have to think about, oh yeah, I did do that and I did that. and it gets me present to myself in a different way than how you just come on a podcast and who knows what that voice in your head is telling you. And I think that's important for people who are aspiring entrepreneurs or new entrepreneurs, because we always see the gap, I think, or almost always see the gap between what we're currently doing or what we're capable of and what we see as possible, but we rarely index on what did it take me to get here, who have I become, what's the value I create in the world. So I think it's a great way to start your podcast, especially given your
Yeah.
audience's intention.
Thank you. And no, I agree with you absolutely, because we're so in it that we forget, right? Like, it's like, I don't know about you, but I laugh at this because I had a guy on here a few weeks ago that he taught, I forgot, it was like mind shifting, but he was talking
Hmm.
about how we see things. And we were actually talking at one point about how I hate social media. Like, you believe
Okay.
it or not, isn't that the funniest thing? Like, I have a podcast, but I
You have a YouTube
absolutely,
channel.
yeah, I despise social media. In fact, it's like I've got people helping me, and just this week, I'm like, "Okay, I've gotta figure out how to get this back delegated because I just hate the energy that's into all of that stuff,"
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But my point, when we were having this conversation, was that I was telling him about how I had created this post, and I started to, like, as soon as I started to do it, I was like, "No, I need to put this out there because it's an important milestone, and it will actually help somebody." But I was having this moment where I was having that self-talk go, "Nobody wants to look at this, Jennifer. Nobody wants to see this again," like, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
inner dialogue we have with
Yeah.
ourselves, right?
Yeah.
To your
Yep.
point, that sometimes it's refreshing when somebody else says something to you, because then you realize, yeah, you do have something to contribute to the world, or value, or worth to put out there. And we just are so hypercritical of ourselves all the time that we overthink
Yeah.
everything, right?
I think that's accurate for most of us. And I think that's one of the critical roles we play for each other. And maybe this will be a springboard into the conversation down the road about leadership. But you know, um, when when you put something out there in the world, and your dialogue with yourself about it is, oh, no one cares about this, or this is just me tooting my own horn, or it's self-serving, or whatever that might be. Or if I compare what I've accomplished to this person over there, it's really not that big of a deal. Those kinds of conversations, it's usually someone outside of you who will reflect back to you the value that they get from being in whatever relationship with you they are in. They're a listener to your podcast, they're your son, a friend, and they'll say something to you about yourself, and it allows you to see yourself almost from the outside in, and it's almost always a bigger point of view. I remember when I was starting this business, which I started, my executive coaching business, I started in 2020, the year of the pandemic. And I had just left a company that I had been coaching for at that time for 17 years. And I had kind of moved up all the different positions in that company. And it was an interesting experience, Jennifer, because that company had programs being delivered in over 100 cities. So one of the things that was really important to them was quality control, as you could imagine. Like, they wanted the experience of their customers to be universal across all 100 cities and 10 languages. So it was really difficult. In fact, it was frowned. It was not difficult. It was not allowed for each individual leader to have a voice in the content,
Wow.
because the
Yeah.
content needed to be controlled. So the only voice you got to have of yourself was maybe the stories that you shared while you were coaching people to elucidate some point, but the content itself, you couldn't, unless you were one of the few people who did that. So when I left the company to go start this business, one of the questions I had for myself, even though I'd been coaching for 17 years and I'd coached thousands of people, was, do I have anything to say? Do I have anything of value to say of my own? Because it had been so long since I'd worked on that after kind of going all in with this company. And although my situation may be somewhat unique in working for a company that controlled that kind of content, and for good reasons, it's not a criticism or anything. I think a lot of people deal with that question: do I have anything to say? And how I went about addressing that question was, I started interviewing people in my life
Yeah.
that I had worked with, maybe in other endeavors. And I worked for that coaching company alongside of also running other people's businesses. So I was like working double duty for many years. And people would reflect back to me things about myself that I didn't see.
Yeah.
And where they saw the value in our relationship was not a place I ever looked. And it really gave me a completely different sense of myself and what was valuable about the way that I interacted with people. And so I think, this seeing yourself from the outside in can be a very important tool for people who are aspiring to start a business, because it is really hard to see your own value sometimes from the inside out. Yeah.
Yeah, that was good. Well, that was a whole great intro right there into leadership, right? That was good. So funny how these episodes that, I never know, like, this is why I don't like to like plan anything out because, I think the organic is so great because you just never know what's going to come in the conversation,
Right.
where it's going to go. But you kind of segue into where I wanted to start off with you was really how you got to where you are. So we kind of got the backstory of how you got, when you were coming to this new place, but I want to back this up just a little bit. What led you to the work that you're doing? Because I think that's, really important. So maybe take us back a little bit to what brought you to where you are today.
Yeah. So what brought me to coaching was sort of one of these full circle transformational moments in my life where I had started off in my early 20s after college pursuing a PhD in philosophy with the intention of teaching, writing, and finding some way to make a difference. That's where I thought I could make a difference in the world.
Yeah.
Then two things happened in graduate school. I discovered, 3 years into my program, that I hadn't really met any philosophers making a real difference in the world that I could see. It was a lot of sort of like people just debating ideas, but not doing anything meaningful in the
Yeah.
world, which was disillusioning. But also, I had a daughter out of wedlock unexpectedly. And it was a challenging situation because my girlfriend at the time and I were living together and had decided to not break up, but split apart because it wasn't going well. And that's when I found out she was pregnant. I was going to be a dad. I had no intention of being a dad. And so my whole life got upended. My whole picture of how my life was going to go got upended.
Right.
And so the only way I was going to get to see my daughter was to start a business where I could take her with me to work, because I was going to be this single dad with an infant. Like, she's going to be nursing all the time. How am I ever going to spend any time with her since I wasn't with her mom? So I started my first business. And during the course of that, I learned a lot about business, but man, that relationship with my daughter's mom was super challenging. We had lots of problems, and nothing that I had tried really helped. We had tried counseling individually and together, and I tried communication classes, and nothing helped. And as you can imagine, for any parents out there, I mean, if you can't co-parent effectively with someone with whom you share parenting responsibilities, it's super stressful if you're constantly fighting and disagreeing. So a friend of mine recommended coaching to me about 3 years into my business. He recommended coaching for my relationship with my daughter's mom. This was 2000. And I took the course that he suggested, and, or 2001. Yeah, 2001. Sorry. And that was the moment when I was in that course when finally someone challenged me to generate the courage that I hadn't been willing to generate to do what needed to be done in that relationship to have it work, which was mostly, in my case, to acknowledge and tell the truth about the fact that I was really intimidated by my daughter's mom. She was an incredible mom, and it was her second time being a mom. And I constantly compared myself to her, and I was like, I could never, in my experience, I could never match up. I could never be as great a parent as she was. And I felt completely invalidated by that experience, but I didn't really know that was going on. And so it was sort of like semi-conscious. And so what I did was I looked for fault with her everywhere I could. Because if I could find fault with her, it was like I kind of came up on my own scale of comparison, right? It was a really, really damaging thing for me to do. And so in the middle of that course, I called her and I found the courage to admit all this to her in a conversation, which I thought for sure she was going to come through the phone and kill me if I told her the truth. Of course, she probably already knew this, right? Because she was experiencing it, but we all think that, we're so clandestine, we're so hidden. So anyway, that completely transformed not just my relationship with her, but it introduced me to this whole world of being a courageous and authentic human being and really telling the truth where I had been hiding things. And that changed my life. And the person who had coached me in the seminar I took, I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to be whatever that person is, however he got to be that way. I want to be like that. And so I remembered at that point, oh God, that's what I wanted my life to be about. And I forgot all about that when I became a dad. Because it all became about provide, succeed.
Right.
And so within a couple of years, I shut down my business. I started running other people's businesses and coaching on the side. And that's, how I got started in the coaching business, was having that profound experience myself.
Yeah, it's always interesting. I love these stories. I'm a sucker for a story. It's why this show is really about the story, because I think that when we have, these, I don't know, I call them like epiphanies
Yeah.
or whatever,
Yeah.
these breakthrough moments, right?
Yeah.
Like, you I always love to ask this question, if, like, when you were a kid, if you saw yourself ever doing these kinds of things, right? Like, my husband and I were talking the other day, and I don't know, I read something about, like, when you were a kid, did you think the world would be this way? And he's like, "No, I think I'm kind of disappointed." And I said, "Yeah, because
Mm.
I look at, sort of like when I was growing up, like, I never thought I would be doing what I was doing. I will say this. The only thing I will say is, when I was a kid, I did used to record stuff on a boom box. When you have to hit the play and the record button
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
boom
Yeah.
box. I did use I'm an early 70s kid.
Yes. I am of
So,
your
yeah.
generation.
Yeah, so I used to record things on my boombox and pretend like I was on the radio, like, I'd pretend like I was a
Really?
DJ. Yeah, yeah, but I would
Amazing.
have never thought in a million years, 'cause we didn't have internet and
Yeah.
podcasting
Yeah.
and all of those things. I would have never thought that any of that would have come into fruition. But I think
Wow.
it's really interesting how, if I look at even, like, your journey when you talk about going into the philosophy stuff, right? Like, you thought that you were gonna do some kind of educating, some kind of teaching was gonna be in
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, you're still kind of doing that in a different way, right? So I
Correct.
think I think our, like, it's our strengths, our desires, those things sort of find their way and weave their way into our lives, but not always in the way that we intend them
Yeah.
to surface, right? And I think that's
Yeah.
what's so beautiful about these stories, is that there's like this defining moment that really guides us back to what we really should be doing, like what it is that we're good at and what we want to do. Somehow it works its way into our life by some crazy story, and
Yeah.
yours happened to be that you had this beautiful child that wasn't planned, that rocked your world. And I will tell you this, my husband and I, we had our first daughter. We were like, I think he was just 24 and I was about to be 24. He would probably agree with you on many things, because he was a wrestler. And so he always had to keep his weight at a certain, weight and all this. But whenever we got pregnant and my daughter was born, he lost a bunch of weight. Like, it was probably the most
Mm.
stressful period of his
Yeah.
life,
Yeah.
was when that
Yeah.
baby first came. Little did he know,
Yeah.
two more would happen. And that was the easy thing, right? So, anyways, love
Yeah.
your story, Andrew. Love the story. It's
Thank
awesome.
you.
So, here's what I would like to know. So, when founders come to you, because you're working with a lot of these, what are you finding? Like, what are they stuck with? What is the thing that they're coming to you for?
Well, interestingly, one of the things that they're coming to me for is something that they would label something like confidence or presence, executive presence.
Okay.
And again, I think that the earlier conversation about having a skewed sense of ourselves that we don't know is skewed,
Yeah.
that largely indexes on the gaps that we see between where we see ourselves today and where we think we should be. And by the way, as a resource on this for your listeners, and also Jennifer, if you haven't read this book, you'll love it. It's called The Gap and the Gain.
Yeah, I have not read that one.
It's a simple short book. It's also an audio book. And one of the two authors is a coach named Gay Hendricks, and the other one is a former coaching student, now business partner with him, who's actually, I think, a doctor of psychology. Anyway, the primary premise of the book, which is relevant to what we're talking about, which is one of the top three things that founders come to me for, is the thing about confidence, is that Gay Hendricks identifies two basic mindsets through which you can view life. And he calls them the gap mindset and the gain mindset. And
Okay.
he defines the gap mindset. And again, the important thing is this is a mindset, right? So this is a particular mental construct through which you view the world. It's not the way the world is, and it's important to
Right.
get that. So this gap mindset works by taking where things are today and measuring them against something out in the future, like an ideal or a should. Like, I should be this way, the business should be this way, my finances should be this way. So you're measuring what's present today against something in the future that is an ideal, and you see the gap. Okay. And the gap the important thing about the gap is when you have a gap mindset is that the gap occurs to you as something that is wrong and needs to be fixed, or something that shouldn't be the way it is. So it's a fundamentally disempowering mindset, because nothing the way it is today is ever okay, right? It's always being measured against this gap. That's a mindset. Now, the gain mindset, by contrast, takes where the way things are today and it measures them backwards in time against where you started. And it recognizes and appreciates the gains that have been made from there to here. So a gain mindset tends to make you feel things like gratitude, pride, a sense of accomplishment or forward progress, and it builds psychological momentum. So a gain mindset is a great thing to practice, and a gap mindset is a great thing to notice and intervene with, because the gains are what are real, and the ideals out in the future are not even real. I mean, no one ever reaches an ideal. I coach people who have, companies that are worth $70 million. Maybe they have a net worth, some of them, of hundreds of $millions. And I also coach people who are just starting out. So I coach lots of different people, but I can tell you that even the people who have achieved that kind of success just keep moving the goalposts and doubt themselves and have concerns about, is this good enough? So this mindset it's never satisfied by accomplishment.
Right.
And so, so one of the things people come to me for is the sense of confidence. And one of the things we have to work on for that often is intervening with this gap mindset and helping them build a gain mindset where they can look at where they are against where they started and begin to have some appreciation for themselves, the struggles that they've gone through, what they have accomplished, the value that that's created in their life. So that's one thing. And I think that's probably relevant to anyone who's thinking about starting a business or they've started a business. You will always see a gap.
Right.
And just to put a period on that sentence about the gap and the gain, I have found, and this isn't in the book, but I found this through my own experience, there's a powerful way to see a gap that can empower you as a person, that can lead you to being very effective, but without feeling like anything's wrong with you or wrong with your situation. Yeah. And I think that comes from something like the love of the game. And the person I love to use, and this is an example of this, and I'll apologize to any listeners who aren't sports fans, but hopefully this person is famous enough that people will know who I'm talking about when I mention Kobe Bryant, the very, very famous, successful basketball player who died tragically in a helicopter accident with his daughter during the pandemic. Kobe was a master of this because he was never satisfied with where his game was, but he was never dissatisfied with himself.
Yeah.
He just loved the game so much. He loved what was possible so much. He just could never get to the end of exploring what else was possible. So he could see a gap between where things were and what was possible that didn't invalidate where anything was today. And I think as an entrepreneur, you need to build that, because entrepreneurship is about looking into the future and seeing something that isn't here now that you can provide and then beginning to provide it. So it is in some way fundamentally, Jennifer, based on seeing some gap, some absence, something that's not here. But there's a way to do that doesn't invalidate anything. And so that's this third kind of pathway that I work with people on. So that's the first big thing people come to me for. Do you want to pause and double click on any of that?
Yeah. Well, no, I guess the question that's coming to mind. So when they're coming to you, because you said something really profound, they're coming to you when they recognize this. So that's my thing. They're actually recognizing that there's something, right? Because not everybody is in that place where they recognize that they need to grow, right? Like, a lot of people are not. I have this conversation daily. Like, a lot of the world does not think they need to. So clearly they're coming to you from a place of, I recognize I need to improve something, right? And I love also that you said this gap and gain mindset, because I think so many of us in the coaching space talk about this in various ways. So I love that this gap and gain, because it puts terminology with this language that we're talking about, because I talk about all this too. It's in a different way, that we get so wrapped up in, like our achievement, that it's hard to be satisfied because we put everything in that. I had a guy come on, I don't know if you caught the episode of Brian Gottfriedson. He is a Cal State professor, psychology major. He talked about this in terms of being versus doing. Like, the doing is the achievement, which is where we place most of our energy. But he said the problem is the being goes with us. That's the leader. That goes
Yeah.
with us to
Yeah.
everywhere we go, and that's what
Yeah.
we need to be working on.
Yeah.
Is that so? I love all these words, like because for so many of us, like I'm a visionary. So even though I always tell people like I'm an optical practimist, so I can be practical, but I'm also optimistic, which is kind of
Yeah.
weird.
Great.
You don't find that
Yeah.
usually. Well, you're probably like that too. Where those people are kind of few and far between because you either got practical and cynical, or you got the optimist that's like not very practical, right?
Right.
And so I love these words because I'm like, okay, for my people that are very logical and practical minded, they can take these concepts and put language on them. And then you
Yeah.
got the people that we can speak to, the visionary people that we can paint it in vision to them. And so I love those words. Thank you for that. So yes, I'm going to let you continue. Then, are there more to these pieces?
Well, I mean, the question you asked was like, what do they primarily come to me for? And
Right.
so the first one I talked about was confidence, or what they call
Yep.
executive presence, or both.
Yep.
Another thing people often come to me for is about when other people become involved.
That's
And
good.
this
Yeah.
kind of ties back into how you opened up the episode about what got you here won't get you to where
Right.
you want to
Right.
go, and why this is a critical gap in skill building that I find most leaders, first time leaders, experience, because what usually buys someone the opportunity to move into a position of leadership, whether it's in someone else's company or when they start their own company and they have some early success and start to grow and start to bring people on, then they hit that wall. At that point, is that what it takes to be an effective, let's call it an individual contributor, someone who can produce results by relying on their own individual efforts. What it takes to be effective at that is a very, very different set of skills and behaviors and ways of being, to your earlier point,
Right.
than what it takes to empower somebody else to produce results
Yeah.
through their individual effort, where you can't directly act on the needles that need to get moved. So you're one layer removed now.
You just,
So,
just pick up where you are.
when you're an individual contributor, an individual performer, what you're relying on is you can figure out how to solve problems. You can take massive amounts of action until the result gets produced. You can deal with, a lot of the failures that come along with that, or the trial and error, whatever you want to call that. You can grind. Typically, if you're successful, you know how to grind, you know how to postpone satisfaction now for something you want down the road. You get up and you go to the gym even though you don't want to, that kind of stuff. Okay. So you've built this set of skills. None of that has anything to do with leading somebody else, not one bit of it. And so it's a completely new domain for you. And what people do is they try to apply the skills they've got to that domain, and they don't work, and they get frustrated. And they sometimes will get frustrated with themselves, typically with the other person, sometimes both, but it doesn't go well. So the other thing people come to me with is a concern for, or a request around, is how do I produce results now through other people? I keep finding myself micromanaging or intervening, or I hire the wrong people, or I hire the right people, but then it doesn't work out, or they're not producing what I need, or whatever. So that leadership and management and influence skill set is really critical once you have your first employee, or your first, key contractor, whether it's a, contractor or an employee. I think you get the point. When you're growing and it's beyond you, you have to learn how to produce results through others. And so that can be learned. Leadership is a learned skill, but most people think it's supposed to be innate. And they think because they
Right.
got to the point where they get to be a leader, that means they should already be a great leader. And that's just not true. And so they don't have
Mm-mm.
much compassion for themselves, and they don't go to work on the right things because they have this incorrect view or belief that because they got to this point of leadership, now they should already be great at it. So you
Yeah.
have to go to work at it. And I know I did. I was not good at it in the early parts of my
Right.
career. I rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. I made all the mistakes. And so I had to learn. And so I'm speaking from experience. You can learn to be a really
Yeah.
great leader by studying the right stuff. So that's the second thing many people come to me for it. Is that something you want to double click on, or?
Well, right when you kind of mentioned about it's almost like the view of leadership, right? Like they think that the skill set that got them there, they think that's the leader, that was their leadership,
Correct.
their personal
Correct.
leadership. But they transfer that same thing to mean that's the same type of leadership you need to use when dealing with people. And you're right, it's absolutely not, it's completely
Right.
different. And like you, I mean, I built teams in all the years I was in Mary Kay. I laugh about this now because I've been in there. I was at Mary Kay 22 years. Okay. I left Mary Kay in 2022, right in the middle of COVID, because, well, for one, I didn't, it was similarly to yours, but a little bit differently because I wanted to have a little bit of creative expression. I didn't want somebody, first of all, I wanted to be able to have my own thing. Okay, makeup's cool and all. That's great. But I wasn't really a big makeup. Like, I put it on, but I don't care about it that much. Right. So it wasn't really that, but it was also I didn't feel like I could have my own creative expression, like I had to do everything by somebody
Yeah.
else's
Yeah.
book,
Yeah.
right? But I realized I laugh about it now because I realized in all those years that I was building teams, like I was awful. I was like a terrible leader. Like I was micromanaging people. I'm so very different now. And it's so funny because a lot of it is I'm not building teams anymore, but I do lead a networking group here. And I laugh because one of the things I was always good at getting people to events, I get people to do
Yeah.
things. I'm pretty
I
good
could
at
tell that
persuading
about you.
people to do things. I've gotten really good at it,
Yeah.
And so I think that that's part of it. You learn, but I think there's so much to this. I mean, it's learning how to work with people and understanding humans and reading the freaking room.
Yeah.
Like learn to read the damn
Yeah.
room. That's
Yeah.
I'm always like, don't make things so hard and awkward.
Yeah.
Read your people. It's not a silver. I mean, it's not what I'm saying. So it's not a black and white kind of thing. There is gray area in this, and I think part of leadership is learning to adapt to all of that and recognize that. It's like I tell you, just in our networking group, it's a funny thing. One day we were talking about emojis.
Mm.
It was Thanksgiving week, and so I always do an icebreaker to kind of get them. And I do fun things like we'll play charades or we'll do Mad Libs or whatever, because I'm just trying to get them to do something different than what they do at a networking
Yeah.
event, right?
Yeah.
And connect. And this particular week, we got in there and I said, hey, we're going to do a thing. If you had to describe yourself in two emojis, I don't even use that many emojis, but I'm like, if you had to describe yourself in two emojis, what would you come up with? Well, it was the funniest thing because they started talking about emojis that I did not even know existed. But the beautiful thing in this, Andrew, was that they started just talking about how they could use emojis in
Mm.
conversation with people to like diffuse conversation or to lighten things up. Like it became now we were talking about sort of how to do this with people,
Uh,
right? In a separate conversation it was on the idea of understanding when you need to text, when you need to make a phone call, when you need to the different because we get so talk about leadership. We
yeah.
get so
Yeah.
honed in on this is the way I do it. I only make phone calls.
Right.
That is the only way I'm going to do
Right.
business with you is if okay, well, fine. You're going to lose a big segment of the entrepreneur space if that's all you do because our millennials and down don't really like the phone other than texting. And I can tell you, my grown kids, all three of them from millennial to Z, not a one of them will answer the phone. I have to text. So you're dealing with those guys as business owners. You better be okay doing some Snapchat, some
Right.
Instagram, like doing some texting or
Right.
whatever. You're going to lose
Right.
them. And that, my friend, I think is all just the little weaves in leadership that we have to
Yeah.
learn
Yeah.
if we want to work with our
Yeah.
people and get them
Yep.
to be effective,
Yep.
because it's not a you and me, it's a team.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's really good
I
that
love it.
is first of all so clever that use of emojis and the way that people built on that. That's really cool. And then, your with
Yeah.
your kids and the way that people in different generations want to be communicated with. I think that's a good example of the challenge of leadership and management and
Hmm.
producing results to others because if you kind of I like in my coaching I like to make things as simple as possible because people can act on something
Right.
that's simple and it's very hard to act on something that's complex. And
I
so
agree.
when it comes to leadership, it's ultimately a function of influence.
Yeah.
Effective leadership is about influencing people to take the actions that they need to take to produce the results that you need them to produce. That's really what it boils down to. And results are a function of actions. So it's about influence. And so to be a great leader, you have to understand influence. And for sure, one aspect of that is being able to talk to people through a medium they'll actually use, to your point. But, but
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
cascade, and also I'm saying this for, all the listeners who are maybe starting to think about this cascade from um, actions to results starts earlier upstream with the way people see the world. And I think this is the piece about leadership that new leaders either don't understand at all, or they have what people refer to as unconscious competence, which means,
Yeah. I know what that is.
yeah. So for anyone who doesn't know the
Yep.
term, it's
Yep.
something that you can do. You're competent at it, but you don't actually know how you do what you do. And sometimes you don't even know that you're doing it. So most people who get to positions of leadership have unconscious competence and influence in some domain. You're great at selling. Like you said, you're great at getting people to, go to places and do things. So you have the ability to influence people in some domain, but you don't necessarily know what it is you're doing when you're doing that, or
Right.
why it works, or how to apply it in a different situation or a different context where it's not like trying to get people to show up for a thing. So the third thing that we were talking about is influence. And there's this cascade from actions to results. And everyone gets that. Like, oh yeah, if I could just get people to take the right actions, they can produce the results I need. But there's this earlier step of the process, which is people can only act as human beings in whatever ways are consistent with how they see the
Right.
world.
Right.
So there's this really critical part about influencing people that has to go back to how do people see the world. Um, and it's really interesting when your view of the world shifts, your actions shift. People can only act in ways that are consistent with how they view the world. You just can't act in a way that doesn't make sense to you. And you can't see the way you see the world. You could just, you just see it that way. So,
Yeah.
you think if you do this thing that people are going to get angry with you. If I call these people twice in a week, they're going to get mad at me. I can't do that. And so you can't get people to follow up or whatever, or they're going to be angry if I ask them, are we confirmed, whatever it is. So being a leader takes a tremendous amount of empathy. This is the point, and connection. To be a great leader, you have to be able to connect with how other people are seeing and experiencing their
I
life
agree.
and the
Yeah.
world, and understanding how the way they see and experience the world either allows them or doesn't allow them to take actions to be effective. And if it doesn't, rather than getting angry with them or thinking they don't care or misinterpreting what's going on, actually helping them create a new way to view themselves and other people and the situation that they're dealing with. So that takes a lot of empathy. So the third thing people come to me for, they don't know they come to me for, is empathy, because that what they are focused on is influence. What they are focused on is being effective to
Right.
others. And what that often requires is developing empathy, being able to see.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you said that because I've said that too. And I think that comes the more that I mean, I always tell people like everything you ever need to solve in life is in a conversation. I believe that. I believe that through
Yeah.
talking to people, you will learn everything you ever need to know. Empathy will be one of them because the more conversation you will have, the more perspective you get from other people,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's even like one day, I don't want to get into all of this, but I was on the Dr. Phil show back when we were having the election, and you can go look it up. I was on when they were doing the vice presidential election. My husband and I were on the show, and what do you know it? Dr. Phil calls on me to talk. And so I have to stand up and do my like 30 seconds. Well, the question he asked was, has your economic status, basically something around, has your economic status changed
Mm.
because of the Biden administration? Well, ours hadn't. My husband's a ninja. We were okay. I was telling the truth. Now, of course, yes, I stood up and said well, yes, like bacon's more money, things are more money, but statistically speaking, we were okay.
Yeah.
Was that. But here's the thing, when we got done with that show, at the end, Dr. Phil stayed in. He was talking to the audience, and they were going around. Like we had some hecklers in the group and behind us that even at the end of the show made a comment, but
Yeah.
they were going around about immigration. And what I found so interesting, Andrew, and I don't want to get like into the politics is, but what I'm trying to show you is the empathy part of this, that there were very diverse opinions on this
Yeah.
particular topic.
Yeah.
But listening to both of them, I
Yeah.
could actually found myself torn in the middle
Yeah. Yeah.
between these views because I could
Yeah.
see the part over here where this person was saying it's very difficult for somebody to come in. And I was seeing this person over here, like, get with the program and do
Right.
everything,
Yeah.
and that's my point is when I say that when you have conversation, like you're talking about in leadership, when you're working with people, it allows you to put yourself into their shoes and actually maybe kind of have empathy and compassion for
Yeah.
where they're going. And so this is why I will say when I work with people, I don't do a whole lot of coaching anymore now, but anytime I talk to somebody, I will always start off and say, I am not going to pretend I know what you are going through right now
Yeah.
because for us to sit there, I don't know about you, but that is a number one pet peeve is when somebody goes, oh, I know how you feel. No, you do not know how somebody feels ever, ever. And don't pretend you do. You can say, I resonate with that, or, like I can maybe understand you're upset,
Right.
but I don't want to ever assume I know how you feel about something because we don't. And I
Yeah.
think that's
Yeah.
what is so great about in leadership is that you can't unsee it. Like what you're talking about, you can't really unsee what you learn. I always say that it's like it's a very different mindset. Like when you start
Yeah.
looking at
Yeah.
things from the
Yeah.
game, or the part you're talking about, you see the world very differently because you can still sit in the moment of a bad situation, but you can also recognize the good in it, and you can also recognize also that maybe what somebody else is going through, you may not ultimately understand all the parts of it, but you can be curious enough to ask the questions and maybe learn what they're
Yes.
doing and grow
Yes.
from it.
I find, tell me if you find this as well, but I find that you can learn almost everything you need to know about how to be a great leader in life from how to be a great parent of a young
Yeah.
child, right?
Yeah,
And
this too, yes, this too.
what I mean by that is, and I apologize for any listeners who aren't parents or aren't parents yet, but maybe, you've witnessed what I'm about to talk about. You can relate to it from there. But one thing that really works with parenting younger children, let's say, under the age of 12, is that the frontal part of their brain, so the prefrontal cortex where all the thinking and analyzing happens, it hasn't developed
Right,
very strongly yet. And so the
correct.
back part of the brain, the limbic area where all the emotions come from, is much stronger. And so when children have emotional reactions to things, they're much, much stronger often than what we have as adults because we are balancing the emotion along with some logic. And so the mistake parents can make with a young child is when they're having this big emotional experience is to try to talk to them logically about, oh no, it's really okay because da, 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 da.
Right.
But that
Yeah,
doesn't do anything for them because right in that moment, all that they're present to is this experience they're having of being angry or sad or whatever. What really does work well with children is just taking that moment to validate, reflect back to them the experience that they're having. Oh, wow, you're really angry. Yeah. Oh, you didn't want me to take the toy away. Yeah. And so you feel angry. Yeah. And just taking the moment to do that and having them experience that you see what they're experiencing and you validated it is all they need to be able to move on.
yep,
Right. And so
I agree.
with this thing we're talking about with empathy, the same thing applies with adults,
I was gonna say
which
bingo,
is
yes.
giving people the experience of, okay, I see what you're saying and I see your view. I see how you feel and validating that. And I'll tell you the biggest challenge I find that people have with this step of validating. So it's getting someone's view and experience and then validating it before you offer something new is that people conflate or collapse validating someone's view or their experience with
Oh,
agreeing with
goodness.
them
Yep,
or giving up something that they want in the situation. And those two things are actually not the same at
right.
all. I'm going to
Yeah.
give an example of this from my relationship with my daughter's mom that I think is a good way to demonstrate this. I always had this experience, even after this breakthrough that we had, for years after that, that she just felt like I was not a good dad, And and I could not get it because I never missed a child support payment and it was showed up for showed up for all of the events and paid for private school and did all the things I thought a good dad was supposed to do, right? I did all the things I thought. So one day I was just like, okay, I just want to get to the bottom of this. And I called her and I asked her, I was like, look, I just want you to be honest with me. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to take offense. I just really need to understand something. Would you just tell me honestly, it always feels to me after our interactions like you don't think I'm a good dad. Like you think I'm a bad dad. And I just want to know if that's true or am I crazy? She goes, oh, I'll be glad to tell you. She goes, I don't think you're a good dad. I was like, okay, so I'm not crazy. So I'm like, tell me why you think that. Why do you think I'm not a good dad? And she goes, because the primary job of a good dad is taking care of the mom, and
Oh,
you didn't take care of me. So I don't think you're a good dad because moms do the lion's share of, this. And she went through her list of things. And I had never considered that before. From my point of view, I was like, okay, we're not in a relationship. I'm married. You know, I'm showing up for my child. I'm paying you child support and the rest is your job. That's not my job. That's how I saw it. Okay.
mhm.
But but I don't even know if that's true or right. I really considered her point of view. I'm like, okay, from her point of view, what she really needed to be effective with our daughter was more support from me. And I didn't give her that. So in her point of view, that I'm not a good dad. And I was like, okay. I just literally said, okay, I get it. I get it. Thank you for telling me that. And then I just shut up, because she
Yeah.
had did what I asked her to do and told me the truth. And she was baffled by that. And she was like, well, what do you mean? I was like, no, I get what you're saying. I get it. It's valid. I can see what you're saying.
Yeah.
And she goes, well, don't you want to say something about that? I said, no, I promised you I wouldn't. And I'm not, she goes, well, I want to know what you think about that. I said, okay. I said, well, I think a couple things. First off, like I said, I think it's valid. I can see what you're saying. I'd never thought of it that way before. So I
Yeah.
get it. And then I said, and I just think it's unfortunate for you that you can only see me that one way. And she goes, what do you mean it's unfortunate for me? I said, well, look, there are things that you do, as a mom that maybe I don't agree with. Okay. There are always going to be stuff like that. I said, but there are so many things that you do that you provide for our daughter that I appreciate so profoundly. There are ways that you are with her that I don't know how to be.
Yeah.
And I'm just
Right.
grateful that she has you for those things. It makes me happy
Yeah.
that she has you to provide those things because I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that you can't see that in me because I know how much joy it gives me, to know that she has you.
Yeah.
So I feel bad for you, to be honest. And I don't
Yeah.
disagree with what you said. And that's all I said. And she goes, okay. And then we got off the phone, right? Let me tell you, that was the first year. I think it was when my daughter was around maybe 10 or 12. She sent me a Father's Day card that wasn't from my daughter saying, I appreciate this about you. I appreciate that about you. I appreciate this about you. I'm so glad that
Oh,
you
you gave me
provide for her.
chills. Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
And, all it really took was for me to
Validation.
validate
Yeah.
her view and
Yeah.
not argue with it. And then in
Yeah.
the next moment, because she was interested and she asked to offer her another point of view that from my perspective was going to be
Right.
more empowering to her, but also give me more of what I want. So when I talk about influence in a way that is humane and connected and not manipulative, where it's like what I call a win-win, where everyone wins. A
Win-win.
lot of
Stephen
my
Covey.
clients come to me for how do you do that? And that's what
Yeah.
I work with them on. Get someone's view, validate their
Oh.
view, and then offer a new view that is a win-win. So that's the third thing.
Andrew, thank you for sharing that story. It's so funny. I had the conversation with my son the other day. He is a chef at
Mm,
a he's been a chef for a little while, but he's young. He's 21. He'll be 22 in May. He's my youngest. And I just
amazing.
had this conversation with him the other day because win-win, Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of the Highly
Yeah,
Effective, whatever. Love
yeah,
that. I talk about it. I just told him the other day because he was complaining about something at work. And I said, remember, Sean, win-win. If it's a win for them, it's a win for you. It's a win for all. That's the
yeah,
goal. And so I
yeah,
have these conversations all the time. But thank you for sharing that story because that is so important. That is such a big component of not and leadership is not just in as a founder. It's like you just said, it's in
yeah,
parenting, it's in relationships,
yeah,
spousal relation, friends. It transcends all over. So that validation, that story was so good because it gave me chills because yes, when you validate, and I love that you said, do not collapse the validation. Oh my gosh, do not. That's just another way of like, no, invalidate, whatever. Do not collapse the validation. You cannot offer your point of view if you collapse the validation. End
Right.
of story. It's never going to work because the other person's not going to receive it. So
Yeah.
thank you for showing that
Yeah.
story because
Yeah.
I think that, I'm a big believer that people learn through stories.
Yeah.
When we sit here and we talk about, things, we can all do that. That's why I do this podcast, because all of these concepts that you guys talk about, I say all the time, but here's what I know. I can say them 100 times and they
Yeah.
love to
Yeah.
listen to me talk.
Yeah.
But you guys come on and you tell your stories. And so all of these stories at the end of the day get these concepts, they just trickle out in different ways. And so hopefully I feel like, all these resonating messages are really this stuff that we're talking about. You can't unsee it once you know it. And
Yeah.
so I think as an evolving leader, I say evolving because it's always
But
evolution.
yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
continuum,
Yeah.
right? It's a
Yeah.
continuum. But I
Yeah.
do believe that this whole gap gain thing is a real thing. And when you can learn what you're talking about to get to that other side, and it's a very different view. Somebody asked me the other day, they said, are you a happy person? And I said, genuinely speaking, yeah. I mean, I've had a lot of bad stuff, and I feel like I've had a lot of really bad things happen in my life. I think that's why I was called to do the work that I do, because I've had a lot of really crazy stories, abusive relationships, and different things in my life that I've had to weather through, 2 rare diseases. I mean, but I feel like that they've
Mm.
given me the ability to, one, gain some of that empathy, but also to speak
Yeah.
into people and really
Yeah.
find that thing I'm supposed to be doing. And I tell you, the biggest thing, you've said this all throughout this, I will tell you, the things that have allowed me to be happy is that move from what we've talked about, that gap to gain thing. It's
Mm.
really that transcendence over here to be able to, all the stuff, practice the gratitude. You can't occupy fear and gratitude in the same space, and you can't
Yeah.
be sad and happy in the same space. I don't believe it. You can have them all. And I'm not saying you're happy all the time and never sad, right?
Right.
But
Right. Yeah.
overall, when you
Yeah.
ask me that question, am I happy? I'm probably going to say, yeah, for the most part, I'm a pretty happy person, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
great
Beautiful.
stories, Andrew. This has been so awesome. We could talk forever, but here's what I do. I want to ask you one final question. You've said so many
Okay.
great things. I want to know, and maybe you will tell me, you've said so many, but I just want you to kind of sum this up.
Okay.
If I were to say, define success, how would you just sum that up in like maybe a sentence or two for our listeners?
Success is being effective at what you say matters at the
Ooh,
end of your life.
I like it. That's good. I like it. Good, good. I love that question. Everybody says kind of the same things, but just a little nuance different. So, all right. Well, this has been awesome. So, if our listeners, somebody listening to this may want to catch up with you, maybe they want to, follow you, they want to reach out, whatever. Where do we want to send them so they can get you?
Okay. Uh, the 3 best ways to contact me. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn and I do check all my DMs there. So you can DM me or reach out to connect on LinkedIn. I always love to receive connection requests from listeners to shows on which I'm an interview. And then I'm launching today my Instagram, Andrew Poles Coach on
Okay.
Instagram. I'm going to be
Okay.
putting out morning walks with Andrew. Just every day I go for a walk. I record myself talking about one of the topics, like what we
Okay.
talked about today,
Awesome.
for 3 minutes. They're shorts or on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
On my Andrew Poles Coaching on YouTube. Or lastly, just go to my website, andrewpoles.com, and reach out to me through there. There's a connect link on there. You can connect with me there.
Perfect. Okay, well, we'll make sure when we do the show notes, we'll get all that stuff in there. And congratulations on that. I'm impressed because I told you social media and me, like I could, this is like my extent is repurposing content. Like that's what I got I'm like,
Yeah.
there's so much content on my YouTube. I'm like, just repurpose the content. It's
Yeah.
all there.
Yeah. Right.
Every time I have to think of something, like just be like, I'm going to get on and talk. I'm like, oh, I got to think about this. What am I going to
Yeah.
say today?
Yeah.
So I want to wish you much success on that. People love that stuff. I mean, they really do. As we know, you go on to TikToks, all video is the way to do it now. So I'm sure you will do well and grab, some followers on that medium. So
Thank you so much, Jennifer. It was
yeah,
so great to be interviewed, but I love the way your interviews follow the breadcrumbs, down
thank
the
you.
trail where they lead. It just makes you really authentic
Thank
and
you.
fun to listen to. It makes it real. So thanks for doing the work you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah. And same to you as well. And so, yeah, it's been fun. Like I said, I know we could sit on here forever, but everybody's got things to do today. So
Yeah,
we'll get to it. But thank you again for your wisdom and the knowledge nuggets. And hopefully somebody here will be listening to this and catch up with you at some point here. So it's
great.
been fun. All right. And of
Thank you so
course, to
much.
our listeners, we appreciate you, love you, hope you found this episode both inspiring and informative. And if you did, you know what to do. All the things: like, subscribe, comment, share it so we can keep putting out all this fabulous content. And as I always say, in order to live the extraordinary, you must start. And every start begins with a what? Decision. You guys take care, be safe, be kind to one another, and we will see you next time.